Hey, I'm back with a new professional setup and I'm here to give you 6 practical tips on how to make oil painting safe for you and your entire family. So this is my studio. It's a small space. It's only about 10 feet by 20 feet. And here I am oil painting in my studio. Many people would think oil painting would be very unhealthy in such a small room because honestly, it can be toxic. Over the next few minutes, I'm going to give you some research data on why oil painting with solvents is toxic for you and your family. Then I'm going to give you some practical tools to transition into non-toxic oil painting and make oil painting super safe for everyone around you, including yourself and your pets. Lastly, I'm going to give you some techniques I use to make oil painting cleanup super easy, almost non-existent, and in my opinion, even easier than cleaning up acrylic, which is water-based medium. You just clean it up with water. So we've got a lot to cover in this video, so let's dive right in. So tip number 1, reduce or eliminate all solvents. This includes solvents you use to clean up your brushes, solvents you use as painting mediums, and any other mediums that may contain solvents. But why should we reduce or eliminate solvents? What's the purpose? Here's why. Exposure to solvents is one of the most common chemical health risks at home and especially in a workplace. These chemicals will permeate your entire environment, and it's your environment that in turn affects your health, just as much as diet and exercise affects your health. By cutting down solvents during oil painting, you can remove at least one of these extra toxic items from your environment and become just a little bit more healthy. Speaking of the environment, solvents are really terrible for the earth in general. Pouring solvents down the drain or dumping rags soaked in toxic paint and solvents into your household trash will eventually lead to our natural, beautiful places. I live close to a beautiful bay here in the Pacific Northwest, and I can't imagine jumping into that bay and coming out smelling like mineral spirits or bleach or pesticides. Ugh. So to fix this, get yourself a fireproof can to hold all your toxic materials. Then when it's full, take it to your local disposal management and have them dispose of it properly. It's really important. But the biggest problem I find with solvents are the vapors they produce. And some of these vapors are heavier than air and collect, lower to the ground. So if you have children or pets, they're closer to the ground and they're completely submerged in those vapors. And it's our children and our pets that are more sensitive to these toxins. A quote that I get all the time from people are, "I've painted with solvents for years and I'm totally fine." Well, like most health risks around us, they are chronic, which means that they take a long time of repeated exposure to see the effects, and the effects can be drastic. Solvents affect your cognitive abilities, they irritate your eyes. Solvents can also damage your liver, your kidneys, your heart, your blood vessels, your bone marrow, and the nervous system. Plus, they have narcotic effects, they cause fatigue and dizziness and intoxication. High doses may even lead to unconsciousness and death. Okay. Enough of the doom and gloom. Hopefully I've convinced you that solvents are really bad for your health. So let's move on to tip number 2. Reduce and replace toxic oil paints. Solvents are not the only thing in oil painting that can be a health risk. There are some paints that contain heavy metals. Most notable would be flake white, which contains lead, and the cadmium paints. This would be cadmium red, cadmium yellow, cadmium green, etc., etc., etc. I mean, the name says it all. Cadmium is the heavy metal. The majority of oil paints, though, contain natural pigments like burnt umber, which is made from loam, and this is combined with mediums like refined linseed oil before it's actually put in a paint tube. So that's all it is. Natural material, natural oil. Both are natural items that are completely harmless as long as you don't eat them. Do I really have to say this? Don't eat your oil paints, okay? Don't eat oil paints. Regardless, Check the back of the oil paint tubes and make sure that they don't have harmful additives, just to be extra sure, because there's some companies that put harmful stuff inside of there besides the heavy metals. If you really like flake white and you must use it, then Gamblin has a flake white replacement that I've used alongside of normal flake white that contains lead, and the properties are very similar. For cadmium replacement, I would suggest going to Gamblin's website and looking at their whole line of colors and matching something close to the cadmiums and use that instead. For example, if you wanted to replace cadmium yellow medium, I would look and see that Hansa yellow medium is a pretty close match. And there you go. You have one less cadmium with all your paints. Utrecht also has a set of cadmium-free oils. Because there's so many manufacturers, it makes it 100% possible to find enough non-toxic oil paints out there that will allow you to create every single color imaginable without any heavy metals. That's great for pigment alternatives, for paint color alternatives, but what about solvent alternatives? Because solvents are the most potent problem for your health. This brings us to tip number 3, solvent alternatives. Now, there are rankings of solvents from best to worst, but I don't really see a need to bore you with all the numbers from the safety data sheets that I've read. We'll go right to the best for now, and that is Gamsol by Gamblin, arguably the best solvent on the market for oil painting. Here's a quote from the Gamblin website. Gamsol is made from products and processes that come into more intimate contact with the body, such as cosmetics, hand cleaners, and cleaning food service equipment. Gamsol is a petroleum distillate, but all the aromatic solvents have been refined out of it. Less than 0.005% remain. All of these factors have led to Gamsol being used widely in oil painting classrooms. In those classes, there are no solvent odors, only the wonderful smell of oil colors. End quote. By the way, Gamblin isn't sponsoring this video. I honestly just like their products. I use them when I paint. Even though Gamsol is a much safer alternative though, it still has an NFPA rating that is same as odorless mineral spirits. And in their safety data sheet, they recommend storing and using it in a well-ventilated room. Which brings us to tip number 4. Tip number 4 is a well-ventilated room, which begs the question, what is a well-ventilated room? Initially, I thought it was all about the size of the room, but after further research, I learned that the size of the room plays only a small role in ventilation. Although larger rooms are better, it's the air that is moving through the room that is important. Even if you are painting in a very large space, but the air is stagnant, not moving, you may want to open a window and put a fan in that window. But in the middle of winter, I don't want to freeze while I'm painting. So the open window and fan is not really an option for me. Let's look at some amazing practical alternatives that not only make non-toxic oil painting possible, but it makes oil painting easier also. This brings us to tip number 5, non-solvent alternatives. And again, I'm going to revisit Gamblin. I love the company because they're always looking for better ways to protect everyone and the planet. They provide 3 different solvent-free, non-toxic mediums: a solvent-free gel, a fluid medium, and safflower oil for cleaning your brushes. I use the solvent-free gel while painting because I like to keep my palette vertical, and the gel sticks perfectly to my palette without running down to the floor. Plus, the working properties are exactly the same as Neomeglip, which is another product by Gamblin, and I used to love before the fumes and the toxicity made me switch. I've tried the solvent-free fluid, but I don't like it that much. It has a sticky consistency that I really don't prefer to mix with my oil paints, But the solvent-free fluid is really great for oiling out your painting if it's dried a bit, so you can get back to working with vibrant colors. And the third solvent-free product that they have allows me to make oil painting cleanup super easy. Which brings us to the sixth and final tip for non-toxic oil painting. Tip number 6, you don't need to clean your brushes. That's right, I said it, you don't need to clean your brushes at all. Well, at least not after every painting session. And here is how. I've been using Gamsol safflower oil and this old cut up plastic container as a soak for my brushes. With this, I'm able to leave my brushes in this bath of oil for months, literally months, and they don't even dry. I even use safflower oil in my airtight brush washer. I've kept this brush washer from when I was using solvents, but I really don't need an airtight container right now with this safflower oil because it's wonderful. There's no smell, it's just oil. But I do add a few drops of clove oil in both containers just to make sure that the safflower oil doesn't dry. And it even smells more pleasant than it did before. Here's my exact process. After every painting session, I wipe off as much oil from the brush as I can into a paper towel. Then I swish the brush around in the brush washer a few times and get as much oil color out of it as possible. Then add it to my oil bath bucket. 5 seconds and I'm done. Super easy, right? And during the next oil painting session, I use the side of this bucket to get as much safflower oil out of the brush, then lightly squeeze the rest of the oil out of the brush in another paper towel before painting. It's important that you try and get as much safflower oil out of your brush before starting the next painting session. Safflower oil dries, but it takes a whole lot longer than anything else, and you don't want patches of your oil painting to be wet for months. I've never really had this problem, but it's good to be aware of. And I've literally had these brushes in the bath for 6 months or more without washing them, and they come out wonderful. Before I used this method, back when I used solvents, the bristles on my brushes would get brittle and quickly fall apart. I was replacing brushes way too fast when I was using solvents. Now my brushes come out flexible and ready every single time I paint. But there are times when I do clean my brushes. After soaking them for 6 months or something, I figure it's about time. Or maybe I have too many brushes in the bath and I need to clean some. And when it comes to cleaning brushes, I always get this question. How do you clean your brushes if you don't have solvents? To answer that question, I'm going to use what I think is a very apt analogy. So you paint with sticks, and on the end of those sticks are hairs. These hairs will get oily when you paint with them. Now think about the hairs on your head. After an amount of time, the hair on your head naturally gets oily, okay? And you need to take a shower or a bath or whatever. I mean, would you step into a shower and pour solvents over your head to get out the oil? No, you use soap and it cleans your hairs just fine. Your brushes are expensive and fragile, much like the hair on your head. So why would you ever use solvents when soap does the job fine and with absolutely zero harmful effects? Use soap to clean your brushes. And that's my answer. When I clean my brushes, I use soap. Specifically, I use Master's Brush Cleaner and Preserver. It cleans and preserves my brushes as well as the safflower oil bath. And I got this huge tub years ago. I use it maybe every 3 or 4 months, and I expect this tub to last for decades. So there you have it. 6 tips for non-toxic, solvent-free oil painting and cleanup to keep you and your whole family safe and make your oil painting session a bit easier. If there was anything I didn't cover in this video, please let me know in the comments. And don't forget to like and subscribe. I plan on creating many more of these videos in the coming months, full of practical tools to help you become a better, more prolific artist. Until then, keep showing up and doing your best one day at a time. I'll see you in the next video.